We will start off, of course, with the welterweight championship of the world, which was on the line last night in Dallas, Texas. The true Errol Spence back in the ring, taking on Danny Garcia. Solid win last night for Errol Spence. Really don't have any issues as far as the scores are concerned. Any of that stuff, I had it 116, 112, which is what two of the judges had. One judge had it 117, 113. I think the only person who had a real beef with it was Brian Kenny. I'll get to that a little bit later on. But I thought it was a good performance by Errol Spence. I thought that, he I thought it was just a solid win all around against a really good opponent. There's not really much you could criticize Errol Spence for in this fight, other than maybe you want to say didn't quite have the killer instinct, didn't really go for broke at the end. But I thought like his point was proven. I said going into this fight, I thought it was going to be very similar to the Mikey Garcia fight. And it wasn't. It was similar in that I don't think that Errol really felt in danger at any point, but I do think that Danny presented more challenges, certainly, and quite obviously more than Mikey did. The size difference was apparent. The idea that there really wasn't a power problem that he could present to Errol was evident. Although he did try and uncork a couple of them. He probably needed to go risk it all a little bit more, because you could just tell early on in that fight there was no shot Danny was going to win himself a decision. The punches weren't moving Errol enough. You're in Errol's hometown. It's just not set up for him to go win a fight like that. So, some of those overhand rights that he uncorked late and some of those big shots that he was trying to throw at Errol probably needed a little bit more of that. Maybe he risks himself getting knocked out, but I felt like the other path to victory it wasn't possible. And we know that Danny's, a guy who usually is looking to react off of somebody's move. And I don't even think that, they kept saying, do you have to bring the fight to Errol? I didn't necessarily think that was totally necessary here. He's not the same style as a Showtime Sean Porter is. But I did think that, there had to be a little bit more of he had to take more advantage of those openings and maybe risk it a little bit more once those were there. And yeah, maybe you risk Errol coming back with something a little bit more vicious. But I think for a guy coming off of a car accident where he gets tossed from the vehicle, he takes a challenge like this, he beats a guy of Danny Garcia's caliber. There's not much that you could, there's not much I really want to poo-poo on Spence's performance. I thought it was a really good performance. I think that he clearly shows that he's still, arguably the best welterweight on the planet. I think that the one thing we all come out of this is that we'd like that argument to be settled. I thought that it was great that Terence Crawford was in the building, that he showed up for the fight. I thought that, with this 60-40 back and forth that's going on between them, I thought that Bud might have thought that move was a little bit beneath him. Maybe would have, I think maybe would have looked upon that as a showing that, okay, Errol is the man or something like that. But I think it's a smart business move. I think you go and you make that maneuver to go to that fight. People get interested in it. And to my surprise, the Fox broadcast, which I wasn't a huge fan of tonight, did a good job of mentioning him, showing him on camera. He even got booed by the people in town, which I thought was cool, that Dallas, Texas had a reaction to him. And I think that was cool that they were supporting their guy. I think that if they were to fight, I wouldn't even think it'd be a bad thing to even put it in Dallas, because at least you'll have, kind of a one way or the other that it goes as far as crowd reaction. I thought that was cool that Dallas had that kind of showing for him. The only thing that I have a real problem with is that he wasn't asked about it in the post-fight interview. And I didn't know, it escapes me who the ringside reporter was. I apologize for that. But I don't know if that person's being told by the producer, I don't press the Terence Crawford thing. It is a PBC Al Hamer production. But the thing that I'm just surprised by is that why show him on television? Why talk about him before the ring walks if you're not going to ask about him afterwards? And there is talk that Terence may jump to PBC. So I thought that that would have been a good look instead of, maybe doing something to not, ruffle the feathers of Errol Spence. Getting back to the action of it, I thought that we just saw a big strength, advantage from Errol early on. And I'm just kind of going back on my notes, looking at it. Um, I thought the first 3 rounds, I had Errol shutting it out. Thought Garcia got back in it on the fourth. He was scoring a little bit more clean. One of the things that bothered me, on the broad, I felt like they were narrative writing already, like they weren't reacting to what was happening in front of them. And I thought that they missed rounds where Danny was scoring clean. And then we're missing the rounds where Errol was having better rounds because, I felt like they were always reacting to the round before rather than what was going on in front of them. But, this fight I thought was really, the big difference of it was like 5 through 8, 9 was just such a clean slate for Errol Spence and really just took over it. He really didn't have any pushback from Danny. His eye was closing up a little bit. So there was some damage that was getting inflicted. And then I thought in the end of the fight, Danny kind of worked his way back into it as far as picking up some rounds, but I didn't really think that it was enough for him to get back in it to win. So, look, it's a good win for Errol Spence. He now takes out another former champion. I would like to see him, get in there. We saw with Sean, he can get in the rough and tumble and win fights like this. I think he's showing good signs as a champion. He's winning fights against guys who are, you would say supposedly more skilled. You could see the hand speed of Danny Garcia. I did think he was able to sneak some stuff, some crafty stuff through every now and then on Errol. I just didn't think that Errol was bothered by it. He was just kind of eating it and going. And so, there wasn't really anything that Danny could hit him with to really bother him. But we saw even in there, and they brought up the Shawn Porter fight. We've seen him win rough and tumble fights and really pull one out where it could have gone badly for him. The Mikey Garcia fight was a complete blowout. So, he's shown right now as a champion in his, realm here, his reign of like 6 fights. A lot of different ways to win. I thought that the Mikey Garcia fight, it was just such a shutout, such a great boxing performance that nobody really knew that he was capable of against a guy that many thought had just better boxing skills than Errol did, and they thought that he was going to be the mauler. We haven't really seen Errol Spence the mauler lately. And I think that's going to be interesting when it comes to him fighting Terence Crawford. I think one of the things that I did come out of this fight thinking, and I will put the caveat to it. Yeah, I know Errol was coming off of the car accident, and this is, balls on him to go take a challenge like Danny Garcia. So I don't want to, I want to make that clear. I like Errol Spence. I think Errol Spence is I think he's I don't even think good is right. I think he's an elite fighter. I think he's got a really cool personality. It reminds me a lot of Roy Jones. I liked how afterwards he was talking about, after the win, they asked him what he wants to do. He just wants to go to his ranch, be with his chickens, be with his animals. But he's shown a lot of great versatility. I've covered one of his fights live. I got to cover the Mikey Garcia fight. I thought that he had a lot of charisma. And so I think he's a fun face for boxing. But I do think that he has shown an ability and has shown, I should say, a vulnerability that he can get hit, that he will eat some shots, and he has been taking on, the lollipop guild a little bit lately. He has been taking on guys that he is a lot bigger than, and that he should be able to bully around and dictate the distance and dictate ring control. He should be able to do all that stuff, and that they can't return a lot of fire. I thought some of the shots that Danny Garcia hit him with tonight, if that were Terence Crawford returning fire, a true welterweight, a switch hitter, a guy who hits with bad intentions, not a guy who's, content, a guy who can definitely, dictate pace, fight back, can really do it all. I mean, Terence Crawford can do it all. I mean, knock his resume all you want. You watch the style, the way the guy fights. The guy has no chink in the armor. And the only thing that's really hurt him really has been promotional mishaps and age, I guess, as you could say. But it's not like we're talking about a 25-year-old Errol Spence. He's on the other side of 30. He's clearly lived hard, and is, walking away from giant car wrecks. So, I don't know if that's a huge advantage for him quite yet. I did think that, yeah, we've seen now in his last couple of fights, it's a guy who gets hit, a guy who can be, if somebody stands toe to toe with him, can get hit a little bit. And I do think that if it's Terence Crawford on the other side of that, with his skill, with his powerful, with as versatile as he is, I think that's a problem for him. I don't know if there's that, that second weapon that Errol could really go to. I almost think that, his best way to go win that fight is to, keep the distance, to keep it at a safer place for himself. Much like he did in a lot of the Mikey Garcia fight, but I just think, watching Terence go in there and do what he did the last time to Kell Brook, not to boxing math it and say, oh, well, Errol was able to break his orbital bone, Terence beat damaged goods. Yeah, maybe, I guess, but he did it viciously and did it highlight style. And I just think that he's just got so many tools in that Swiss Army knife that is his ability. The question is, like, what does it take to get this done? You did have Manny Pacquiao tweet about Errol Spence after the fight. Is that a possibility? I just find it surprising. Look, let me tell you something. If Manny goes in there and is able to is going to go fight Errol Spence at his age, I mean, the absolute grapefruits on Manny Pacquiao to go do that is absolutely crazy. There has been some rumblings of, would Errol Spence move up to go fight Canelo at middleweight? I think that would be an interesting one for sure. But I just think that this legacy would be, for both of the guys, would just be unfulfilled if they didn't get this done first. I think for an Errol Spence, if you want to go beat Canelo Alvarez, who also has his own business that he has to take care of at 168, plenty of fights there. It's going to be a tough fight to make anyway. I guess it's not, because Canelo is technically on a one-fight deal right now. But if I was anybody else, if I was in the middleweight stable of if I was Jamal Charlo and I found out that PBC was going to make a fight with Canelo Alvarez and they weren't going to make it, I'd be pissed. And they've already done the crosstown thing before with Tyson and Deontay Wilder. There's just no good reason for them not to fight each other. There's not. They're clearly the two best in the division. I realize what Canelo brings from a box office standpoint, but I got to be honest with you. Canelo versus Errol Spence, I'm sure it would do great money. I'm sure it would do huge numbers. But I think that Errol versus Terence, I think, would do good numbers too. I really, really do. We've just seen now Mike Tyson just do over 1 million pay-per-view buys at 54 years old. Better than anything boxing has to offer. The only thing that came close was the heavyweight title fight between Deontay and Tyson Fury, and Mike Tyson and Roy Jones smoked that. Now, it was cheaper. I will put that caveat. It was cheaper. So I'm no mathematician, but I think maybe it was the same gross between the both of them. But even still, just quantity-wise, Mike Tyson did better numbers at 54 years old than Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury in their rematch. So I don't know, man. I just think that if you're Errol Spence, look, I'm not gonna go out there and call you afraid to fight anybody. If you're gonna say, hey, I'm gonna go call out Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez is an absolute monster. He's beaten light heavyweights. That guy's been an absolute stud for a long time. I don't think I gotta sell anybody on that. But a piece of me would be disappointed because you're really gonna walk away from this division without this question being answered. That bums me out. That would bum me out. I think that if you're at this point of your career and you've beaten the former champs and everybody basically PBC's thrown at you, there's nobody really left for them to throw at him. He's run off through all the outside of Keith Thurman, who just lost to Manny Pacquiao. There's one thing left to do. And I think that him versus Canelo, fine, do it, but it should wait. And if I'm Canelo, quite frankly, if I'm Canelo, I'm like, all right, yeah, Errol Spence, cool, but I still think you got to kind of sharpen the edge a little bit for me to be willing to step in the ring with you, because I'm the one taking all the risk there. If you're Canelo Alvarez, I'll hear you out. If it's Errol Spence, the undisputed welterweight champion of the world, you go beat Terence Crawford. All right, then we can have a talk. And then I'm saying, okay, that's a monster blockbuster fight. And I don't think there's anything wrong with Errol Spence setting the groundwork for this. But, to me, it's the same thing with the Manny Pacquiao thing. Like, why should Manny Pacquiao have to go fight Errol Spence or Terence Crawford? Why should he have to go be their cash cow? This guy's fought everybody in every division there was to fight for decades. And Canelo, too. Canelo was taking, monster fight after monster fight after monster fight. Has come close to losing plenty of times. And all the fans are clamoring for an undisputed welterweight champion. And you're sitting here and you want to go fight Canelo? I'm not saying it's soft. I'm just saying it's disappointing that you're going to just leave the throne like that with somebody else being able to claim all the belts. Because that's good. That's what I think would happen. I think that so Errol's going to leave, I would imagine everything's vacated. And man, I would imagine Terence Crawford probably walks into PBC and whoops everybody's ass and takes all the gold there. And, I would be bummed out by that. But we'll see. They didn't even mention him on the broadcast tonight, so I can't say that tonight may be any more optimistic that it would happen. But if anybody, did more to try and make it happen, Terence Crawford showing up to the fight, I thought it was a cool showing by him. And I think it would have been nice if Fox on their broadcast would have acknowledged that in the post-fight interview, and maybe we could have gotten him on the record about that. I want to mention one thing before we move on, because I got a lot of news to get to from the week of fighting. That was so I want to mention a couple things from the broadcast. First of all, great undercard. I want to first point that out. I thought that was a really fun card. Eduardo Ramirez, nasty KO against Miguel Flores to start off the night. Josecito Lopez, he gave the business to Francisco Santana. Probably a fight that should have been stopped. I know this was a big debate. Eventually was in the 10th round. Arguments were, should the corner have stepped in earlier? I don't know. I think there probably could have been an argument in the 9th round when he got dropped. That probably would have been enough. So was it an extra round too much? Maybe. But Josecito Lopez definitely opened up a huge can of whoop ass on him. Really, really impressive performance by him. I know people got freaked out by it too. Goosen was upset on the broadcast that as a trainer he would have stopped it a lot earlier. I do wonder this. It did make me wonder this, and I don't want this to make it seem like I'm blaming anybody, but I do wonder in boxing. We've recently seen what happened to Deontay Wilder, what he did with his trainer when he fired Mark Breland for throwing in the towel against Tyson Fury. I wonder if that's going to hinder a lot of trainers doing that. Boxers are guys who want to go out on their shield. They've put all this into it. They all say they want to die in the ring, and it's a different mindset, man. Listen, it's not one that I want to criticize or poke at. I don't understand that because I haven't put myself in that mind frame of combat. So I don't know. But, the whole thing with Mark Breland is just pissed at him because he felt like Mark Breland sabotaged the fight. went against orders, that he was never ever to do that. And I do wonder that if other fighters have told their trainers, yeah, don't do that, otherwise you're going to end up like Mark Breland. I don't know that to be the case with Santana's fighters, but it did make me wonder if there was going to be a trickle down from that, because it was a very high profile fight. Deontay Wilder's obviously a huge star in boxing. The star of the night, though, other than Errol Spence kicking the crap out of Danny Garcia, was my guy, Sebastian Fundora. Oh, this guy's my new faves. 6'6", 154. Also found out tonight, because all I knew about him was that he was giant and skinny, was he was born in West Palm Beach. I didn't know that, right here in our backyard. So I may have to reach out to the Fundora camp. Now, he moved to California when he was 9. So it's not like I don't think a lot of his fighting background happened down here. But I'd like to learn more about it. This guy was fun. He put a whooping on Habib Ahmed. Just absolutely blistered him with some big shots. Finished it in the second round. As the coolest nickname I've ever heard, the Towering Inferno. This dude is he's a star in the making. Was completely charming afterwards. At 20, he was like, oh, I don't have my glasses. Whooped a guy's ass without his glasses. Adorable. So I love this guy, Sebastian Fundora. That was a great night by him as far as his showing was concerned. The only other thing I want to mention with the Fox broadcast, first of all, it's not a very good broadcast, the Fox broadcast. And I don't understand why PBC has this for Fox. I don't know why PBC doesn't just carry over the Showtime card, because I think the Showtime broadcast has always been top notch with Custer, with Mauro Ranallo, with Al Bernstein, and now I guess they got Abner Mars because they fired Paulie Malignaggi. But I've always found that to be a very good broadcasting card. I don't know why Fox went with their own crew. But my biggest gripe, first of all, my two biggest gripes are this. One, Lennox Lewis, he gives you nothing. It's just like Ray Leonard on the Mike Tyson card, where he's just, he's barely engaged in the fight. He's got no opinions on anything, just nothing. And the other thing, and I really think this is the weakest part of the broadcast for sure, because I think Goosen does a good job. Brian Kenny, and I say this as somebody who really likes Brian Kenny, and like him as a guy in boxing, as a guy who talks about boxing, as a guy who I respect his knowledge of boxing. I like Brian Kenny. The guy has been hosted, would go at Floyd Mayweather. I respect Brian Kenny as a reporter. I respect him as a boxing pundit. He's not good at blow by blow. He's not. He stinks at it, quite frankly. It feels too much like he's trying to host, Friday Night Fights or, Boxing Tonight on ESPN or his own podcast. Like, he goes about it in this style where, like, they're having a debate almost every round. And it's just like, bro, you're not, Brian Kennedy, I think he even does good talk shows. You're not doing a radio show. You're not doing, you're not setting up debate. And you feel like he's always setting up debate. And so I'm watching this fight and I'm watching the rounds go by. And so, like, I think Danny Garcia is having a good round, but they're debating what's already happened the last 3 rounds. And he's like challenging Goosen and like, not, trying to like engage. And it's just like, well, all right, man, but this isn't the barbershop right now. We should be like talking about what's happening here. And so I would think, like, immediately, as soon as whenever Jim Lampley is a free agent, and they got to go hop on that, because Brian Kenny, put him on the desk, put him as a reporter, or even, even have Brian Kenny there as almost in like the Max Kellerman role. I think they would be better off putting like Lampley with Brian Kenny and Goosen as like have Brian Kenny almost as an analyst, but him as a blow-by-blow guy. Sometimes I think like they just say, oh, this guy's been around boxing for a long time, they're good at it, or he's not. He's so poor at like telling me what's happening, because I'm sitting here and I'm almost like wanting to put the fight on mute, because they're not talking about anything that's happening. They're like recapping what had happened 3 rounds beforehand. And they're just not in the midst of it. Like even afterwards, he was like debating four rounds for Danny Garcia. It's like, yeah, he probably won 4 rounds, Brian. You wouldn't know that because you were, missing. And then he was like getting crazy with the CompuBox. Just, I don't know, man. I thought it was a bad job by him tonight. And if we do end up getting Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence, I hope that they have the ESPN crew because that crew blows this crew out of the water.